So for this section, we're going to be talking about workers' compensation and other disabilities. Occupational Safety and Health Administration is OSHA. So a lot of times with workers' compensation cases, you're going to hear a lot about OSHA. OSHA was established back in 1970. It is designed to guard against dangers in the workplace and can include toxic fumes, faulty machinery, and excess noise. Many times, if there has been a lot of workers' compensation complaints in one business, OSHA will come in and kind of do a look around and an inventory to see if there's something specific going on in that facility, the reason a lot of workers are getting injured, or if there's something else going on. Workers' compensation eligibility. They can include federal employees, railroad employees, self-employed individuals, real estate agencies, for-hire domestic maintenance or repair workers hired to perform a job for a homeowner on less than a full-time basis, drivers, prison inmates only employed by the prison, volunteers, independent contractors, clergy and members of other religious orders, and then agricultural workers. Okay, so covered injuries and illnesses. For instance, personal injury, death, occurs by accident or occurs during the course of employment would be covered injuries. Now, injuries again include back, carpal tunnel syndrome, parking lot injuries, heat-related injuries like burns, hernias, and cafeteria or restroom injuries. If an injury occurs in the restroom at the facility or in the cafeteria, it is still covered under workers' compensation. Disability terminology. You're going to have to know these a lot, especially in medical assistance, because when a patient comes in, you always have to document any new information. So you all the time have to document their pain terminology, which can go from minimal up to severe. Minimal is basically annoying but does not interfere with the individual's ability to perform the job. Slight pain is tolerable, but the performance of some work assignments may be impaired. Moderate is pain is tolerable, but the performance of some work assignments will show marked impairment. And then finally, severe pain requires avoiding activities that lead to pain. Disability terminology continued. This is also going to be found in your book, and you're going to have to know this for the test. But understand limitation to light work, precluding heavy work, precluding heavy lifting, precluding very heavy work, and then precluding very heavy lifting. Basically, what this does is each of these defined words just kind of breaks down for the employer plus the physician what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do in workers' compensation terms. So filing a claim. An employee must report the incident immediately, preferably both verbal and write it down. Employee will be treated by a physician the employer chooses. A lot of time if a physician is in the workers' compensation network, a lot of times that employee has to go to that physician if it's going to be covered under workers' compensation. Submit claims directly to the employer's workers' comp insurance, and the patient should have the info. When a patient comes into a doctor's office, this is going to be a whole other separate claim than any other insurances that they might have. Even if they're a regular patient there, you still have to fill out a new demographics packet explaining what happened in a little more detail, and then you're going to submit this to the workers' compensation insurance, and the patient will have that information. Always document everything, especially for legal purposes. Always document everything, especially if a patient is not compliant with the doctor's orders that they have to go to physical therapy or taking pain medication, whatever the case may be. Always document everything. Termination. This means for termination of workers' compensation. If the employee is given a release from the physician to return to work, employee is offered another job. Now, for that, if an employee is offered another job in the facility to where they are able to go to work every day and there's not going to be heavy lifting or any strain on the injury, and they return that down, that is means for termination. An employee has exhausted all the workers' compensation benefits. Employee cannot work due to other circumstances. An employee does not cooperate with the physician guidelines for treatments. An employee has returned to work or the employee has died. If the employee does pass away, any workers' compensation benefits will actually go to the next of kin or the power of attorney. Other forms of disability. Sometimes you're going to receive some supplemental Social Security income for disabilities. You're going to bill that just as you would anything else. Preparing disability reports. It's always important at the end of the term when the patient actually is released from workers' compensation care and the employer or the insurance company wants more documentation to either A, maybe work out a settlement, or B, allowing the patient to go back to work. It's always important to provide a medical history, all the SOAP notes, any testing or diagnosis results, the treatment, and the description of the patient's ability to perform work-related activities. Are they back to be able to perform full work activities or possibly less? You're going to get a lot of questions about disability from a lot of different patients. It's always a good idea, like I said, to document everything, especially if anything ever goes to court. That way you have everything documented. Now, Now with HIPAA, there's actually some grayness when it actually comes to HIPAA. A lot of times patients are going to have to sign release of record information to allow the employer and the workers' compensation insurance representative to review medical reports. Now that does not mean the medical report has to include what had happened to the patient 5 years ago if it's not work related. There's a lot of gray lining there when it comes to HIPAA. The patient does have to fill out specific information and sign specific release forms before any information can be turned over to the workers' compensation, insurance, or the employer. Please email me if you have any excess questions about workers' compensation or any disability.